Jocelyn from Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. I just want to welcome all of you coming and making such a great turnout for Tammy. We're an independent bookstore. We support independent authors, independent publishers, so we're glad that you're here supporting not a big corporation, but a little mom-and-pop store. You know, how little things get big. We're trying to get big, just like Tammy is. So thank you very much. I'll let you go ahead and do this.
Yeah, thank you. What's interesting about this moment for me is that it wasn't necessarily preordained for a lot of different reasons. Those of you guys who've seen me grow up and, you know, for some number of years know that I was not always scribbling and writing stories. I mean, there are lots of kids, you know, you hear authors who say, well, I was always writing stories and, you know, throughout my life I was always scribbling in notebooks and things, and I was never that person. I've always had my nose in a book, which probably most of you will recognize. And so there were, and books and stories and novels and especially mysteries have always been sort of as necessary as air to me. So that was always my thing. Looking back, it might seem like it was obvious because I made words my career in terms of marketing writing and technical writing and those kinds of things, but I'd never written fiction until I had an idea about 8 years ago. Woke up one morning and thought, huh, there's an interesting start to a story. I've never written anything like that. Maybe I'll try it. And I did, and I took a class, and I took another class and went into a writing group and just sort of went on with that. And about this, that was not this book. That was a different manuscript that is safely in a drawer where it belongs. But you know, I think all writers have that. You have, yes, yes. But that was a learning experience, and at about the same time, I got involved in the world of racing randomly because I was working for a company that started sponsoring racing, and all of a sudden I was on the inside. And you know, some of you guys came along and got to see some of that world as I was doing it. But I went from knowing nothing to knowing a lot, and having this insider access that was just crazy. And you know, I'd go away from the races and tell people about, look at this cool thing, and this really neat stuff goes on, and it's amazing. And at the same time, you know, I'm reading these mysteries where you learn about different industries or different hobbies, and you're entertained and you get a story at the same time. And at some point, it was actually a particular race weekend, a light bulb went off, and I thought, huh, I could educate people, teach people about this world in the same way I'm learning about it, and tell a story, and no one out there's doing it. So I started thinking about, well, I should write a mystery about the racing world. And at the same weekend, I happened to have a dinner with an author, Hallie Efron, who's a great teacher, mentor, has written a great book on how to write a mystery, in fact. And I explained this new idea I just had. Of course, I'd done nothing on it. I just had this idea, and I'm all on fire. And she says, that's great, but she has to be the race car driver. And I went, okay, I don't know how to race a car. Because they say write what you know, right? Right, I was going to make it safely someone who worked in the marketing side of the racing world and things. She was like, no, it really needs to be the race car driver. And I went, huh, well, I don't know how to race a car. Then again, I haven't ever killed anyone either, and I'm going to write about that. So, and at least I can go to racing school. So I took that approach and did a whole lot of research, did indeed go to racing school, scared the life out of me, but got through it and had a good time and really learned a lot. And then could do more research and understand what I was seeing and what I was learning. Fortunately, I also have a mechanical engineer husband who can explain all of the, you know, the technical aspects and the forces and the dynamics and things to help me get some of that right. So yeah, and I ended up with this manuscript about a female race car driver who is, you know, 24 and brave and many things that I am not, but still, I'm sure, has my voice and my way of looking at the world. And you get writing stuff like this, and I would get to a point and think, well, I'm not Kate, but okay, well, what would I do next if I were there? All right, well, I'll write that. So I know some people have said what's fun for them because they know me is reading the book and hearing my voice reading it. So I don't know if any of that, and maybe now that I've met some of you, you will hear a little more of that. But it's been a really interesting experience, and now I was just saying to Matt, who's sort of going through this process on his own, that it's very strange being on the other side, because for 6 or 7 years this story has been in my head, and only in my head. And now I run into family members or coworkers in the elevator who say, "Oh, I'm reading and I'm at this part where Kate's just gotten off the racetrack for the first time." And I'm, "How are you in my head?" "Oh, right, this is, okay, yeah, I'm at that part now." So, and every time it's thrilling. It's just amazing. Again, this wasn't preordained. I didn't expect this and want this all my life, but it's maybe more special because it was a surprise and I was actually able to do it. And because it sort of made, as I look back, a lot of things brought me to this point. So it's a special time, and thank you very much all for being here. Can I tell you specifics about the story, the process?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Any question? I mean, specific questions you guys have, or?
Well, of course, there's always the outliner or blank pager.
Oh, I'm a seat of the pantser. In the writers, we either call them plotters or pantsers. Do you plot and write an outline, or write by the seat of your pants? And I'm definitely a seat of the pants type. I sat down to write this book knowing it was going to be 3 days over a race weekend, and it was going to start with the Saturday morning and end with the Monday afternoon of the race. And, you know, the end would come with the end of the race, and that's all I knew. Having that built-in structure was good, because I know exactly what happens through a race weekend, and I could say, okay, well, it's lunchtime. They would be doing this because practice is going to be right afterwards, or whatever it might be. But I was, and in fact, I was 2/3 of the way through the writing of it, or 3/4 even. I didn't know who the killer was. I had a couple different ideas, but I didn't know for sure until I got near the end.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really.
It's like a mystery.
Yeah, it was a mystery to me. Yeah, so that was a really interesting experience. The one I'm working on now, I'm plotting a bit more, and we'll see how that works. I started writing it actually during the month of November, which is National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and writers will commit to writing 50,000 words of a novel or a complete novel in the month of November. And I needed to jumpstart myself last November. And so I basically shut out the world for about 3.5 weeks and just sat down, and the first day was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, because I'm going to start writing this day. I came home from work, I'm going to start writing, and I had no idea. I mean, I knew sort of where it started, but I had no idea what was going to happen. But you sit down and you just, something will occur to you and you start writing. And I think what it is it's in there. It's in there in the subconscious, and it's getting it to the conscious mind so you can put it down. And I write in the afternoons because I go to work really early. So there's no chance
It's more of a word processor.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Are you going to involve the same character in the next book?
Yes, I plan a series. Kate will remain the same in the series. Because she's fictional, I figure, unlike the drivers of today, I can really take her a lot of different places in the world, every kind of racing series, any kind of cool race I want to go to. So I can have her drive Formula One and NASCAR and sports cars and whatever else, which means, you know, summer trip to France, 24 hours of Le Mans, you know, rough. Tax deductible. Yeah, so I do plan a series. The next book is going to be a lot of the same characters. I'm going to keep her, she's going to be, it's about a year later, same team but different tracks. And this one will be a little more off track and out of the car, a little more, you know, Kate and some of her relationships and the rest of the world of a race car driver.
When you were, can you talk a bit about how you addressed the dialogue, especially when it wasn't Kate but the rest of the characters?
That's a really interesting question. Dialogue for the other characters.
Yeah, like getting out of the voice of Kate, which would be a lot of your voice. Okay, so when you had to adopt a different character and have her talk with people, how did you deal with that?
I think that what I must have done is thought of other people. I know that I did think of other people, not always that this character was this person always, but that there were characteristics or attitude of a character that were a specific person. And so when I would think of that person, that character, I would channel a little bit of that attitude. Again, I'm trying to say I didn't associate, you know, my husband with this person and my father with this person, but an aspect of, you know, my father might be a character, and I might think, well, how would he respond?
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of them weren't even people I know really well, but I might have met somewhere at the racetrack or at work and simply have picked up on that personality trait and then, you know, mutated it some into my own idea of that person. Because there is some amount of simply, I have a sense of this person in my head, and so I have a sense of how they talk. So there is fundamentally still some, I just made it up. And fortunately, hopefully I made it up so the characters are distinct enough. It's a very interesting sort of process question. And it gets back to some of this, you know, I don't outline. I don't have a detailed file of a profile for each character. It's seat of the pants. You know, I'm sitting there going, oh, and Stuart has to say something. Well, he'd sound like this. So I think there's, again, some of that subconscious to conscious mind tapping into that some of it's just there. That's a good question. Sorry.
Well, I imagine in the next book there's going to be a murder, right?
Yeah.
So how do you? So she's not a cop. She's not a private detective. How do you get away from the murder she wrote aspect of? Hey, the dead people seem to follow me around.
Well, there is going to be, you know, in a mystery series, there's going to have to be some suspension of disbelief that this person keeps finding dead bodies or running into them or being affected by them. And so that's one of those that I've decided the audience is just going to have to go with. Where I'm not asking for suspension of disbelief is in the accuracy of, you know, the racing scenes and the real world that can be verified or experienced. The thing I'm gonna, the Murder, She Wrote syndrome, for you guys is, you know, that she lived in this one little town, and Cabot Cove must have had the highest volume of, you know, dead bodies per capita, like murders ever. But the good thing is that Kate's always gonna be in a different place. And so it'll be a different city, it'll be a different racetrack, and later different racing series. I don't always plan to have her, in fact, she doesn't find the dead body that is the setup for the second book, but someone close to her does and then is implicated, and, you know, then it affects her. So there will be twists like that. It won't always be her. Someone asked me the other day, was I going to need to bring in a cop or a PI or turn her into one, which is another way, you know, to get around that, because you expect cops or PIs to deal more, to, you know, in their normal course of life, to run across more dead people and nefarious deeds. And I haven't worked that out yet. I think when I feel like I'm stretching credibility too much, I'll stretch it some. I'll get there.
Where's the next book? Where's the race?
2 races. There's a beautiful racetrack in Wisconsin called Road America. It's in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and actually we are going there next week because the series, it's going to be the same series, and the series is actually racing there next weekend. So we're going on a combination research and promotional trip, so I can scurry around and make sure that my memory of exactly how the paddock is set up and, you know, where cars end up going off the track actually is correct. And then it will also be at a track, interestingly, Road America is the first one, and Road Atlanta will be the second one, and that's outside of Atlanta, Georgia. It's actually the home track for the American Le Mans Series, and they end their season every year with a 10-hour race called the Petit Le Mans, based on the 24 hours of Le Mans. So it's the Petit Le Mans, 10 hours, and it's really an interesting race because it's that long. It's also the track where I went to racing school. So I know it pretty well, and it will be a lot of fun to write about. And I'll have lots of people I can do research with. Different instructors at the track and things. Yeah. Yeah.
Did different mystery writers did you draw inspiration from any particular other mystery writers?
Oh, yes. Dick Francis, in particular. He's always been my favorite because, and it was, Sue Grafton had a quote long ago about his books that you feel smart when you finish reading one of his books because you learn something, and his protagonists tend to sort of be quiet people who are smart and have integrity. And actually, when I was writing the first book, I was chain reading his books because I own all of the paperbacks, and I was just marching down the line. A lot of authors don't, or writers don't read. I don't know what you do. I'm looking at you like. Yeah, a lot of writers don't read in their genre while they're writing because they don't want to be influenced. I knew, I'm writing about car racing and a female in America. I was not going to end up sounding like him because I had, my own voice, and it just, I wasn't worried about it. And so I was just chain reading because it was keeping me aware of sort of the balance I wanted to strike of story versus detail. And when I went out to try and pitch the book to agents and publishers and things, I said I wanted to be the Dick Francis of auto racing with a female race car driver.
Good pitch.
Yeah, that was what Hallie Efron, that first weekend I had the idea. I said, yeah, I love Dick, and she said, there's your pitch. Dick Francis of auto racing, female race car driver. I went, now I have to go write it. You had a question?
Have you considered, I know this is just your first book, and you've got a couple more to finish up, Kate Reilly. Is it mystery you're going to stay with, or have you thought about different way to go with writing?
If I had another idea, I wouldn't be opposed to writing. At one point, I had an idea for a romance about a different female race car driver, and that one I was actually outlining and sort of trying to do a summary and a synopsis and things, and it just didn't work for me. I couldn't. Something wasn't coming together. So I wouldn't be opposed, but right now, I really like. Mysteries, especially the traditional mystery, are my happy place. I like that everything turns out okay in the end, and they're going to go through some difficulties, but they're going to learn, and everything's going to be all right in the end. There's a wonderful author, S.J. Roseanne, who I highly recommend, who gives a speech on genre, and she talks about why people read different genres, science fiction and romance and mysteries. And her argument is that what it is that people want things to make sense. They want an explanation. That there's a lot that happens in life that just it's random and there's no explanation and you don't know why something happened. But in a thriller or a mystery, you always know why. It may not end, with a shiny bow and everyone's happy in the end, but at least there's an explanation. And so things make sense more. And I know why the genre appeals to me, because there's chaos and disappointment and frightening things in the news all the time, and you can go here and be reassured that there are reasons.
Reasons for those dead bodies.
Reasons for the dead bodies. Well, sometimes people have to die, right?
And honor of the story, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Any other stories I can tell? Questions?
Well, I'd be curious to know, when everybody sort of has an image in their head about NASCAR, fans and the whole NASCAR inside. Was there anything that surprised you, or were your expectations met when you started to learn more about the inside of it?
Well, I really had no expectations. That was the interesting thing. I went from knowing absolutely nothing about racing to being put in a car and given a lap around the track with a race car driver, not a race car, but a street car, but with a real race car driver, and being on the inside. So I didn't have expectations. Still, plenty of things surprised me, and let me add the caveat, this is not NASCAR. So then once I learned about NASCAR, there were more surprises. But what did surprise me was the rock star status of drivers. That was the first thing. who knew, right? But you know, they walk around in their fire suits and they are the rock stars. And you know, I've gotten to know some of them, and it's hilarious in a way. And you know, because they're people of every intelligence level and background and you know, the country that they're from. I mean, they're just sort of normal people of all different types. And you know, some are really attractive, some are really smart, some are whatever, the whole range, and every one of them is treated like a rock star because they have this talent. Which, you know, I mean, it's...
Is the guts to do it in the beginning and then learn how to do it right?
Yes, I think that there is also, you know, a God-given talent, like any athlete, really. Yeah. The ability to focus and the ability to, you know, find the edge, because that's really what they're doing. Is they are keeping a race car on the edge of losing control at all times. So and so there is a lot of nerve, certainly. But I think some people have that instinct and that ability more than others.
I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So that the rock star status surprised me, and then when I started learning about NASCAR, the whole sponsorship and marketing angle, it still fascinates me that that there are so many rabidly loyal fans, that a company or a product can sponsor a driver. I mean, you can't think about the NBA. You know, no one sponsors the NBA stars, right? Not even the team. It would be weird. It would be unthinkable. And yet, you walk into Office Depot and there's a live cutout of Tony Stewart, you know, saying buy Office Depot products. And and you know, I know people who are not even really NASCAR fans who go, well, no, I go, you know, Lowe's and Home Depot. No, I go shop at Lowe's because they sponsor racing. It's not that they sponsor Jimmy Johnson versus Joey Logano, but they sponsor sports car racing. So I'm going to choose to patronize them. You know, so people do make decisions based on the fact of sponsorship. And I mean, I don't know. You guys are fans. Do you choose products because of the drivers?
Oh, the only kind of ketchup we have is no.
There's no ketchup sponsor. Well, yes.
Would you tell them a little bit about your weekend role reversal with Chet in sports?
Oh yeah, my weekend role reversal. My father thinks this is my father. My father thinks this is particularly funny because I got my tendency to be a sports fan from him. Okay, let me just say he's still a Raiders fan. Okay. I would follow sports so I could have a conversation with him. My husband likes cars. He's always liked cars. We have a lot of cars. All right. And then I got involved in racing, and so now I'm the sports fan for racing, and I can tell you about different teams and different series and what's happening and who's in an argument with who and who's racing here. And oh, it's kind of interesting because they're racing for this other person in this other race on their off weekend. And, you know, I follow now the stories. I still couldn't tell you statistics and those kinds of details, but I sit down every weekend, almost every weekend, and watch racing. And he's not a sports fan at all, really. he doesn't really get into racing at all. In fact, racing kind of puts him to sleep. He's a true story. He actually fell asleep on the top of a hauler in the infield of a 12-hour race. Cars going for hours and hours and hours. It was apparently it was relaxing. I walked into racing school. I was terrified about racing school, all right? I'm not one to squeal tires. I'm a total chicken. But I'm like, I have to do this. I have to be behind the wheel of a car. If I want Kate Reilly to have any kind of, you know, authenticity, I've got to do this. And so I arranged to go to racing school at Road Atlanta after a race, run by the people I know, run by the people who run the series. They would take care of me, all of this. And I walk into racing school, and I pick up my name tag, and I'm chatting with the people I know, and I see 3 more name tags hanging there, and I go, no, really? Because it was those 3 guys who had been the finalists for jobs, and they all got hired by Jack Roush, and David Reagan was one of them. And I looked at those, and I looked at the guy who was running school. I said, not really. He said, There's going to be a big difference, a very big difference between them and me. Unfortunately,
On the curve?
I'm sorry? Yeah, yeah, no, they kept me separate. They split us into two groups. We shared cars, so you had a partner you shared a car with, and they put them in the other group. And the fascinating thing was that every session they ran, no matter where those guys pulled out, because they would stagger us and send us out so we'd be spaced out, they would end up, the three of them, nose to tail, like drafting each other around the track. And they were there just to brush up on their road racing skills because they were more oval racers. So that was my story. At the time, I said to them, I'd introduced myself to the class and told them I was writing a book, so I was doing research. And at some point, one of those 3 days, I said to them, guys, if I ever come find you at a race, remember me. And they were like, okay. So we'll see. Maybe I'll try and, follow through on that. But, David Reagan's kind of my guy now. And I saw one of the instructors a couple weeks ago at the last race we went to, one of the instructors from that thing, and I said, hey, you were the one who did the drive around with them, because the drivers would do a drive around with each person in the school. And I said, yeah, he just won his first race. And he went, oh, yeah, I take credit for that. There you go. All right, well, I think I'm going to stop talking now and maybe sign some books if you all want.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.